Hello and welcome to the online rally of the Youth Summit to Ban Factory Farms. We are so excited about the amazing speakers that we have here with us today. We'll be hearing from Chef Babette Davis. We'll be hearing from Jamie Margolin, the founder of Zero Hour, from Ludovica Martella, an amazing researcher and also part of the Zero Hour team, and from Isaias Hernandez, digital content creator of the brand Queer Brown Vegan. We're so excited for all of you joining us here today to be wrapping up the Youth Summit to Ban Factory Farms, a 3-day summit in which we have been able to engage lots of young people and everyone else who has joined. So thank you so much for joining us. We're very excited to be hearing from these amazing speakers today. So this summit is co-hosted by Cultivate America, a youth-focused organization on food system solutions to the climate crisis, and also by the Youth Climate Save movement, a youth-led movement with 66 chapters around the world to address animal agriculture in the youth climate movement. First today, we'll be hearing from Ludovica Martella. We're so excited to hear from, and then we'll be hearing from Isaias Hernandez of Queer Brown Vegan. We'll be taking action during this rally, actually, so definitely stay tuned for that and how you can have an impact today. And then we'll be hearing from Babette Davis, from Jamie Margolin, and we'll be closing out not only this rally, but a whole summit. So we're so excited. First off, our first speaker is Ludovica Martella. We are so excited to hear from her. So I'm going to hand it off to Ludovica just now. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. This is really an honor to be speaking alongside these great activists and speakers. And thank you, Cultivate America and Youth Climate Safe for creating the space. It's great to be here today. As Lana mentioned a little bit, I am part of the Zero Hour movement, and my research focuses and my work focuses on highlighting the intersection between climate change and other issues such as social issues, gender justice, racial justice. And I work mainly with in support of women-led indigenous food security projects. So you will know where my content comes from. But with the time that I have today, I like to sort of give you some tools that you can use in order to have some kind conversations with the people who might not be engage or know about why it is important to ban factory farms. And this is really to empower you and in order to have like conversations, constructive conversations about these issues, especially during this time of change. It's really important to just, come together and have some good tools. I'm going to be throwing out some data. So stay with me, and this will be also available in a written piece that will be published with the Youth Climate Save. But Lana can definitely give you more details about that later. So don't worry, you don't have to write everything down. But first point that I like to talk about today is is how animal agriculture is interconnected with climate change. And why is that? Animal-driven products have a massive impact on greenhouse gases emissions, as well as on the usage of natural resources. So this is really important to keep in mind. This is due to deforestation and farm stage emissions. So let's start with deforestation. Deforestation obviously endangers not only the ecosystems of the forests, but also the communities that live within them and who live by them, surrounding them. And this is because rainforests are increasingly being transformed into rangeland. And this is because producing food for the cattle takes up a lot of space, a lot of land. And this is the main reason behind the ongoing burning of the rainforest, of the Amazon rainforest, which is still happening. The media has not really been talking about it recently, but this has been increasing tragically since the election of the Brazilian president, Bolsonaro. And, to put this in perspective, data shows that almost half of the world harvest is actually given as food to animals. And this is incredible if we think about it, because obviously in a negative sense, because we're still experiencing a huge hunger and malnourishment problem in the world. And this is not due to lack of food, but to distribution of food. So, for example, 90% of the soybean harvest goes to animal feed. And the Food and Agriculture Organization estimates that still 800 million people are suffering from hunger. And this is a point that I will actually come back to, but which is really important to highlight. So what about farm stage emissions? These are, so combined land use and farm stage emissions account for about 80% of the footprint of most foods. And generally, animal-derived foods have a higher impact than plant-based foods. And on the higher scale, we have lamb meat and cheese, which produce the highest carbon footprint within all. Poultry and pork have lower footprints, but they're still higher than most plant-based foods. And additionally, the methane that is produced by the cattle and the livestock animals account for 18% of global greenhouse gas emissions. Then let's talk about natural resources. This is another huge problematic of factory farms, because factory farms are a water and waste problem. And as you all know, water is important, critical for life. Just us as humans, we're mainly made by water. And at least 15,500 liters of water are required to produce 1 solo kilo of beef. You tell me if that is worth it, if that is a way to use our natural resources. In total, the meat production demands more than 2 trillion tons of water every year, and that is about 63 million liters a second. What is shocking is that in less than 40 hours, that's enough quantity to provide drinking water for everyone on Earth for a year. And if you're interested in this particular data, which to me is always shocking every single time that I revisit it, you can find it on the World Counts website. And obviously more resources that then they will be shared by Youth Climate Safe. But in terms of waste, this is also a human health issue, because cattle and livestock animals generate an estimate of 13 billion tons of waste every year. And I like to usually make the comparison, which is backed up by data. This is the weight of the Eiffel Tower in Paris every 24 seconds. So just to put that in perspective. The problem of what to do with this waste is ever growing. The waste, which includes pesticides, antibiotics, herbicides, fertilizers, ends up in our wetlands and in our wildlands. And one example of this is what is called the dead zones. One of the largest dead zones can be found in the Mississippi River outflow in the Gulf of Mexico. And essentially, this is where the water is so poor of oxygen that marine life cannot be supported. And this obviously impacts not only the marine ecosystem, but also the socioeconomic status of the communities, of the coastal communities, which, for generations have sustained themselves by practicing practices such as fishing, for example. So, in a nutshell, this is the why factory farm agriculture is a climate change problem. Obviously, there's much more to say, but something else that I want to speak about, and that I touched upon already a little bit when speaking about malnourishment and hunger. The second argument that you can make with your, friends or family on why it is important to ban factory farm, it's because it's really a racial justice issue as well. As you know, as I hope you know by now, the climate change affects mostly and tragically Black, Indigenous, and people of color. On average, that is just how, unfortunately, our system has been creating these even larger disparities. So, to just show you with like some more data, like why this is true, 80% of the people who harvest our food reside in developing countries. And they are also the percentage that suffers the most from malnourishment and hunger. So even though they're producing our food, they're exporting it all for profit, obviously creating more greenhouse gases emission. And, this is really to highlight the importance of local food systems and food security. And this brings me also to highlight a third argument that you can use on why it is important to ban factory farm. It is also a gender issue. And if we want a gender violence issue, 60% of the undernourished people that we just spoke about are women and girls. And this is something particularly unjust if we also consider that women on average are made up the majority of the agricultural force. And this is obviously, not even considering the fact that women usually undertake most unpaid care, labor, work in homes and in the informal sector. They don't have land rights and so on. And, in terms of the violence that is done to the animals in these farms, in these factory farms, is really terrible. It is an example of the control of the female fertility by an external force. The control of female fertility for food production uses invasive technologies that manipulate female bodies. And, most people make the argument that it's not the same to separate, a cow from their babies after she's been impregnated constantly on a loop by force, and ending up eventually killing the male babies. People claim that it's different from a human mother. And this really goes back to the idea of how, as humans, the majority of us, at least in Western societies, believe that we are at the very top of the pyramid, while at the same time, actually, we are all connected. We are connected to the nature, we're connected to the animals, to the insects, to everything. So, you know, I know this is a lot of very hard information to digest, and I don't want to take too much time from the other wonderful speakers here today, but I just want to really emphasize that if you are feeling overwhelmed by these problematics, you're definitely not alone. But it is important to understand how these problems are all interconnected. And once we know that, we have the ability to really leverage our knowledge and make informed decisions, and leveraging our power to vote for the right people is probably the most important first step that we can do. And deciding what to put in our bodies, what companies we give our money to, are also other important steps in order to dismantle this systematic oppression that doesn't care about feeding the people, but only cares about profit. So food liberation is people liberation. And the only one thing that I want to end with is that all of the data and the oppression that I've been speaking about, the violence that is done to animals, I'm talking about the capitalistic Western food system, because there are actually indigenous populations, those who do consume meat. They don't use this kind of violence, so they don't do it for profit. They don't believe that they are at the very top of the pyramid. You can hear some New York sound in the background, by the way. And therefore, these are two very different things. For indigenous people, animals are just sacred. And I could go more into this, but I just think it's very important to point out that we're talking about like a Western capitalistic system here of oppression.
Thank you, Ludovica. Thank you so much for talking about all of those very important issues.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so next up, we will be hearing from our next speaker, Isaias Hernandez of Queer Brown Vegan, who we're so excited to hear from. Welcome.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Yeah. And thank you so much again for mentioning about all this global environmental injustice that mechanization of factory farms have created. And so essentially, what I would love for people to really understand is just making these interconnections within ecological concepts, right? And so the first concept, like I really wanted to briefly review, is like nutritional ecology, and seeing how like the heavy mechanization that created these factory farms is linked to environmental colonialism. So nutritional ecology kind of looks from the beginning of our food systems, right? Starting from the organisms, right? And so the way that we have treated the land through factory farms have, of course, continues to the degradation and the decrease of nutritional levels within our own foods. And so in past research has been reported that, even within our fruits and vegetables, like, of course, they're like they have heavy pesticides in them, but the nutritional value has severely decreased. And so when we look at nutritional ecology and food systems, we need to really understand that, like, if we're harming and like degrading and poisoning our land, it's also going to reflect in the food that we eat. So obviously it's so important to really recognize that. And so when we talk about the organisms and insects that are obviously in there, and we use concepts like insect ecology, that's essentially looking into like how we're treating the insects, right? And so insects and like floral ecology go intertwined together. So most of our flowering plants obviously are 90% insect and animal pollinated, right? And so when we're obviously ingesting and injecting so much poison and pesticides and herbicides within our own land, it's obviously creating a long-term detrimental effect for even our own pollinator populations. And so with the decline of soil levels and nutritional qualities going down and the increase of chemicals being input into our land, it's obviously creating a global environmental injustice issue, right? And so I think that one of the most important things that we should be looking into is that, without one obviously chain or link that is interconnected to this main reason, then we obviously may face a lot of food shortages in the future or slash, global food security. And so I think that's one thing to really note is that as we're continuing on within our environmental journey and just learning about how all of these things are interconnected, it's just really recognizing too that, it's obviously a human rights issue, and those who obviously advocate for environmental justice and climate justice is that we really recognize that, as mentioned from previous speakers, that, these waterways and systems of air are obviously going into Black, Indigenous, people of color communities where they're the ones who have to face the severe effects of environmental racism. And so when we're obviously creating this link from starting from the organism to the human, then we'll see that, it's obviously transmuting into this form of like poison. And so I think that, as we're continuing on with our work with environmental justice and, advocating for the liberation of the people and animals, is also recognizing that, the power and privilege that happens within those fields, and I think that one thing to note is that many of the farm workers there obviously are undocumented, and so they're not really able to sometimes speak or seek for justice. And so it's also really advocating for these communities too that have been growing our own food and necessarily recognizing that, even though we're eating a plant-based lifestyle, that we need to understand that these bodies and these people are also being abused by the system. And so within environmental racism and colonialism, they go hand in hand, where we're challenging these institutions that have forever taken the land first from Indigenous communities, have of course created these subsidies and programs that have obviously created these loan programs where farmers are not able to really get out of this mechanization of monoculture. And two, it's like the Black farmers have been the least ones that have access to loans and have access to land. And so it's really about restoring these partnerships and land partnerships to be able to really continue this momentum of our future of what we would reimagine. And so I think like some of my last words that I would love for just people to really think about is just understanding that, even within yourself, you may not know what to do or where to start from, but it's just looking into yourself and seeing like what issue you're very passionate about and understanding that everything at the end of the day will be interconnected. So I really hope that this is a kind of great takeaway for people to really learn more about factory farms. And so, yeah, I think that's pretty much it that I would love to speak on.
Thank you so much, Isaias. Thank you as always speaking so eloquently on these issues and sharing with everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. So now we're going to take action on specifically the Farm System Reform Act is why we're here today, right? That was introduced in Congress. It will ban all new factory farms and phase out factory farming by 2040. So this is really exciting for all these different reasons that we've been talking about, how animal agriculture is really impactful, how it impacts communities, how it impacts the environment, how it impacts animals, all of these reasons. So I'm going to post that on the different live streams that we're doing. So that everyone can access that. And it's a very quick form. You basically just need to put in your information. So that means put in your name, your last name, your email, and your address. And that's pretty much it. You just put in those basic fields of information, and then you can email your representatives. It automatically finds them for you in the House and your senators as well. And you're able to edit the template, although the information is already there for you. So basically, just go to the link really quickly, put in your information there, and it'll automatically find your representatives in Congress, and you can tell them how important it is that we ban factory farms for all of these different reasons, and that we support the Farm System Reform Act to do just that. So we really do need more co-sponsors on this legislation. That is a key part right now, is getting all of our representatives to have this on their minds. So just really quickly fill that out, and you should be able to contact them, which is really exciting and is really what this whole summit has been leading up to, right? So I'm going to leave that in the different chats, but make sure to fill it out. It should take no more than a few minutes. So I'll give everyone a chance to do that. And we'll also be following up afterwards to make sure that everyone who attended the summit has a chance to take action, because this is the most important aspect, as always, of our events. Next up, we will be hearing from Chef Babette, who we are so excited to hear from. And then afterwards, Jamie Margolin. So we're really excited to hear from these amazing speakers. And I've talked to Babette Davis before on Instagram Live at 0 Hour, and it was absolutely amazing. So I am so excited to hear what she has to say today. Welcome.
Hello, everyone. First of all,
Hello.
I'd like to say I'm just completely and totally honored to have been invited to share my thoughts on such an important topic. Man, I consider myself a custodian of our planet home. I am a vegan chef. I own a vegan restaurant in Inglewood, California. And I became vegan, in 1990. I was turning 40 years old, and I'm about to be 70. And it turned out to be one of the greatest things I've ever done for myself. And now I know it's one of the greatest things I've ever done for our planet home. As our speakers so eloquently stated, factory farming contributes to just a multitude of issues that we're having here on our planet, our home, our water, air pollution, deforestation, and for the amount of meat, eggs, and dairy that we get from factory farming is such a tiny amount for all of the destruction that goes on. Now, we've got a lot going on our planet. We've got a lot going on in the United States. Yeah, Black Lives Matter. We've got police brutality. We've got all kind of issues happening. But let me tell you what's not gonna matter if we don't clean up our act, if we don't get this together. Nothing is going to matter, because we're not going to have a planet home. And that means that each and every one of us has to become custodians. And we have to stop. We have to stop paying these people to kill our planet. And that is what we do. Every time we buy meat to eat, eggs, dairy, every time we pay them to destroy our home. And it's time for us to do better, because like I said, nothing is going to matter if we don't have a place to live. When I started this journey, I wasn't thinking about environments. I wasn't thinking about anything but how I was going to feel if I stopped eating meat, and how my skin was going to be if I stopped doing all the things that I was doing. I felt wonderful. It was great. But it's not just about me. It is about the whole. It is about all of it. And each and every one of us has a responsibility to clean up our act and clean up our planet for future generations, or we won't be here. And that's the sad state of affairs, because we're acting, I don't know, it's all about money. Everything is about money. And it makes me really, really sad that other sentient beings are being treated the way that they're being treated. It makes me really sad that we treat ourselves so poorly. And so then I wonder, if we don't even know how to embrace and love each other, what really is going to happen to us? We're one. We're the human species, and we're connected to the whole. We're connected to all of it. When we hurt others, we hurt ourselves. That's just the way it is. So my prayer is that we stop contributing to the slaughter of other sentient beings. We stop contributing to the slaughter of ourselves. We stop contributing to the slaughter of our home. We eat right now food that we can't even digest. Why on earth are we still ingesting food that you have to take medication after you eat it to be able to digest it? When the intelligence created a diet for every species on the planet, there's a diet for each and every species on the planet. And then humans decide that they're going to eat the diet for everybody. I'll just have everybody's diet on my plate. And then we suffer. We have a poor quality of life. We're ruining our water, our air. We're hurting each other. We're malfunctioning. We've forgotten how to love. And so I have to speak. I have to do what I have to do because it is my responsibility to take care of our home. So thank you for having me here today. I guess really, what else can I say? I just know that I have to do my part, and each and every one of us has to do our part if we truly love our home, if we truly want to leave a good place for our children after us to be able to live. If we want animals to continue to survive, it's the saddest thing to see baby cows being ripped from their mothers, or what they do to chickens and pigs. When you see the videos, it's just like, it's the worst thing I think I've ever had to envision, except for a knee on George Floyd's neck. That's how horrible all of it is. And we're humans. We walk upright. We think. We create. We invent. Let's love. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Such touching words always. Oh my goodness.
I'm so sorry.
I'm gonna cry. I really am. Thank you so much, Babette.
Sweetheart, thank you for having me. I'm so proud of you guys. I'm so proud of you young people, because you're lead, you're just doing it's a good fight. It's the best thing that you can do for all of us. And thank you so much. And whenever you need me, whenever you need the old lady, call me. I love you guys.
Oh my God, we love you so much. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you so much. Oh, that was such a beautiful speech. I will now bring up our next speaker, and we're going to hear from Jamie Margolin, hear a little bit more from the youth perspective, from the youth climate movement, and of course, an amazing, amazing climate activist, founder of 0 Hour, writer of a book actually on youth activism, Youth to Power. So really done some amazing things. We're so excited to hear from you, Jamie.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. Hi everyone, my name is Jamie Margolin. I'm a youth climate justice organizer and co-founder of the international youth climate justice organization 0 Hour. And I've been hearing, a lot of talk about factory farming and all of the ways that our farming and food system has gone so wrong. And I think one important thing that we have to remember is that this isn't normal. I'll tell a little story of my family. So my family on my mom's side is from Colombia, South America. And my grandma, she grew up most of her life living off the land on not like a farm, like a factory farm at all, but like her family had this little tropical farm in Cundinamarca, Colombia. And she and her siblings, they just lived off the land, and there was no pesticides used. There was no extractive relationship with the earth. my grandma never actually went to school, but even then she had a better understanding of, she wasn't a climate scientist. She's not a climate activist by any means of the traditional sense. And she didn't grow up, she didn't even go to school, but she still understood, and she and her family understood that if you treat the land right, it'll treat you right. If you treat the creatures around you right, you will in turn be rewarded. And so they were able to have all of the food that they wanted. You could just climb up a tree and get a mango whenever you'd like, or a plantain, and have all sorts of different, they had all sorts of different food items that they grew. And there was I asked my grandma, well, how did you grow so much? And she was just like, the land was plentiful. It was just plentiful. You planted anything and it would grow. That's how fertile the soil was. It wasn't because they used any pesticides. It wasn't because there was any sort of special chemical or treatment done. It was just the way that they farmed was in a very traditional way that wasn't like miles and miles of the same crop to mass produce, oh, I just whipped my hair, miles and miles of the same crop to mass produce it. That's not what happened. It was a very traditional way of farming with the land that didn't extract from it, that wasn't taking away all of its resources, because each plant played its own role in the farm. And so there would be some crops and trees of fruit trees, and then other crops that helped balance that out. And there was just a traditional knowledge. And she and her family were healthy, and there was a traditional knowledge as well of medicine in the way that, and my abuela, she still does this, like whenever I'm sick, she will, say like, before you take any medicines, let me try. And she puts in her own natural medicine using different like stuff around the house, and just because of what she grew up. And so we call my abuela, who hasn't had a day of like real proper schooling in her life, really, we call her Dr. Lucila, because maybe even though she doesn't have a medical degree and she's not a scientist, she knows the science of the land, and she knows the science of nature in a way more intrinsic way than a lot of us know. And so that way, the food, they were able to stay healthy, and they were able to stay, they were able to live in harmony with the land in a way that wasn't depleting the resources either. So it was a win-win. And now fast forward, my grandma, she now lives she lives between the capital city in Colombia, Bogota, and Los Angeles, with where a lot of my family lives, in Los Angeles. And so, she was saying that people put in so much. She was talking to me because I was telling her about my work as a climate justice organizer, because she doesn't consider herself an activist, and she isn't in the sense of that she doesn't march in the streets or anything, but she understands this climate crisis and our relationship to the land in such an intrinsic level. And I was talking to her about it, and she was like, Jamie, I don't understand why people make things so hard for themselves, why they put so much chemicals in things, why they extract, why they treat the animals so badly. Back when I was little, all the animals roamed free, and we were able to, and we had everything that we could ever want to eat without having to put a single pesticide in the ground, because we knew how to make sure that each plant complemented itself in terms of rotating crops. And so that was really an interesting insight for me, I remember. And the reason why I'm telling this story of how my grandma lived is because for most of human history, that's how we lived. Like this factory farming, this way of extracting from the earth in such an extreme way is something quite new. If you look at the grand scope of human history, most people farmed like my grandma did. Most people, all of these pesticides and chemicals and animal cruelty and all of this stuff, this is quite new. This is a product of, and this is how factory farming is intertwined with all of these other systems. This is a product of our current capitalist system and our way of just extraction and living, our relationship to the earth and to people and to animals being so extractive and being so violent. That is something fairly recent. And so when we talk about solutions, we have to understand that it isn't, I think it's easy for things to get normalized for so long that you think that that's the only way, that living in such an extractive way, that getting our food in such an extractive way is just the only way that has been and the only way that ever will be, because that's what we know. And oftentimes what we know is what becomes normal. But I think we have to remember, as we have these conversations about shifting away from animal cruelty and industrial animal agriculture and factory farming, is that it's not normal, and that we have done it other ways for the most of human history. And so change is possible. If you look on the bright side, change is possible because we have done it before. And there are still people alive, and there are still people in many places of the world practicing that intelligent way of farming and getting food in a way that is healthy for both the earth and the people, because it's also not healthy for us to eat food that was taken in such a violent way, to eat food that is pumped full of so many chemicals. And so it is still possible for us to change. And there are people alive right now all over the world who are leading the way, or who have led the way in creating new ways. It's not new, actually, of going back to the old ways of how we used to get food. And it's not so radical, and it's not so, people think it's not so radical to say that we should get our food in a way that replenishes the earth and replenishes ourselves. And now, I guess, talking about what we can do to make that shift happen, now that we've talked about, how it's possible and how it has existed before, and how what we're living in now is not normal and shouldn't be considered normal. Now, how do we actually make that change? Well, right now that we're in quarantine with the coronavirus, a lot of things are getting worse, because there's this myth, I think, that the coronavirus has been somehow good for the planet, which is absolutely false, because apparently, more people are staying home, so they aren't driving as much, so there's less emissions. But all of these corporations, both the fossil fuel industry and the animal agriculture industry, they're still lobbying, laws are still being passed. Like, Capitol Hill hasn't stopped. Laws are still being passed. Politicians are still in the pocket of these industries. And we still have a lot of work to do. And so even in quarantine, we can still raise our voices against and for certain laws and legislation that support what we are fighting for. And we can still make a difference in our communities using the digital tools that we have online, participating in things like these, educating our community, and getting back in touch with our roots of how we are supposed to get food, and how we are supposed to interact with the planet. The youth climate movement is something that has grown a lot. It has grown a lot in the past. My phone went off. It has grown a lot in the past year. And there's a lot of momentum, and there has been a lot of power. And I think we have to understand that power hasn't been lost just because we are in this situation where we are quarantined doesn't mean that the power went away. Mass mobilization, I think people are being discouraged because we can't strike in large numbers like we used to be able to, and we can't manifest all of our potential and show ourselves out in big numbers in the streets like we used to be able to do. But remember that marching and strikes is just a tactic to get to a goal. The act of marching, the act of striking was never the goal itself. That was just a tactic to get to a goal. And so the movement has not gone away. The people who care have not gone away. We are still here, and we are still fighting. Just because something is not in the news cycles anymore doesn't mean that it has stopped. Just because a movement is no longer in the news does not mean that that movement has gone away. It just means that the cameras aren't on it at the moment, and that's okay. And so I really encourage everyone to plug into either a local or national, or whatever works best for you, organization that is fighting the climate crisis, fighting industrial animal agriculture, and to get involved and work with your community remotely. I know that we're in quarantine, so you can still do a lot remotely and online. And then once you build that community, and once we're able to all go outside and be with each other again, then you will have already started that community. So if you want to get involved with the youth climate movement or with the climate movement in general, you can always join 0 Hour. We are a youth climate, for those of you who don't know who 0 Hour is, we are a youth climate justice movement that has been around since the summer of 2017. We organize marches, rallies, lobby days, etc. around the climate crisis. And we talk about animal agriculture. We talk about all different systems that cause the climate crisis and that are damaging our planet. And so if you want to plug in, if you want to get involved with us to take action, you can go to thisiszerohour.org or follow us on social media on at This Is Zero Hour on any social media account, and you can reach out and plug in. And we are working on a new campaign called Vote for Our Future, which is working to get out the vote. Young people, get as many people registered to vote. We're endorsing a lot of down ballot candidates and getting people to vote, especially locally as well, because with all these elections coming up, it's important that we elect politicians who are not in the pockets of neither the fossil fuel industry nor the animal agriculture industry, because the animal agriculture industry, pesticide industries, chemical industries like Monsanto and other places are very, very powerful, and they have a lot of money and control that they influence in the government. The reason why a lot of these ways of farming have been normalized and that people haven't been able to place a lot of regulations on them or really stop them from doing what they're doing is because a lot of these the pesticide companies, all of these corporations that play a role in the system of industrial animal agriculture have a huge hand in the American government. And I'm sure that my expertise is only in policy here in the United States, but I'm sure that it is not unique to the United States and that they are doing the same thing all over the world. And so that is why we really also have to get that money out of politics, and we have to vote for candidates who are not going to be in the pockets of these corporations that are causing this system, that are enforcing this system. And so there's so many different ways that we can take action. Yes, you can take action through the way you eat, but also through the way you vote, through the way you mobilize, there's just so many layers to this. And I think everyone can find their own way to plug in. Last but not least, I also wanted to talk to you all today about my new book, talking about if you are looking for any more skills or advice about how to get involved in activism or organizing. I just came out with a book called Youth to Power, Your Voice and How to Use It, which is a guide to being a young organizer for any cause. So if you are looking for more ideas for how to get involved, if you're looking to read from more stories from diverse young people across many different causes about how to organize, how to get involved, how to mobilize, how to make change, and all of that, you can order the book at www.youthtopowerbook.com or find it at your local bookstore. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because I think, there's so many different ways that we can take action. And so if you're watching this and you're like, oh, I really care about this issue, but I don't know how to get involved or how to take action, I recommend the book as a first step of learning a little bit more about the different tactics that are at your disposal and how you can organize and how you can take action. So thank you so much to everyone who put this event together. I'm going to end with this. There's been a lot of talk lately about let's go back to normal after the coronavirus. Everyone is saying we have to go back to normal. We have to get back to normal. And my question is normal, like before the virus, not my question, but my statement is that normal was not a good place to be. Normal was still industrial animal agriculture and all of these other systems that are destroying our planet and destroying us. So I don't think that the goal should be to return to normal. The goal is not to go back to where we were before the coronavirus. The goal is to now mobilize our society to get to a better place, to get to a place of, to build the world that we want to build. And so I really encourage everyone to be focusing not on going back to normal, not on trying to return how we were back before this pandemic, but try to mobilize our society to build a better world, to build the world that we want, because we can't go back, we can only go forward. And normal was a very bad place to be. Normal and the status quo is why we are in this climate crisis in the first place. It's why we are having this horrible system of getting our food in the first place. The normal, the status quo is incredibly dangerous. And so our job is to fight for a new normal, to create a new normal, to use every power in our disposal, to use every power in our toolbox, to use everything that we have to create a new world. And that can be through your own personal actions, through your vote, through organizing, through mobilizing, through educating yourself. There are so many ways that we can build that better world, but we have to do this, and we have to not go back to normal. We have to create a new normal for all the young people out there. I know that it's unfair that we even have to be doing this work in the first place, considering that our leaders left us with such a broken planet, with such a broken system, and it can be exhausting to do this work. And I know how hard it is, and I know how sometimes you just feel like you want to give up. And to that I say, make sure to take care of yourself. This is very tedious work, and tackling these systems is so depressing often, and it can be very emotional, and it can be very sad because there's just so much injustice everywhere you turn. But I would encourage you to surround yourself with community, to take a step back whenever you need to, take some deep breaths, take care of yourself, center yourself, and then get back in there, because we need everyone in this fight. And together we can create a new normal, one that is just for everyone. Thank you so much to the speakers for organizing this event. Thank you so much to everyone who is listening, and let's get out there and make a difference.
Thank you so much, Jamie. I'm so appreciative of all of your work.
Thank you, Ilana.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone who is joining us today, especially all of the amazing youth activists and aspiring youth activists who have been joining us for this summit. A reminder that you can take direct action right now through our link bit.ly/online rally action, and ask your representatives to support the Farm System Reform Act, because it is so important to ban factory farms for the animals, for the planet, for our communities, and for our future. So make sure to do that if you haven't yet. Thank you all so much for joining us for this summit and for this rally, and thank you to our amazing speakers as well. Thank you, everyone.